Hello and welcome. It is the Kenn7 podcast, and I've got another football chat, and we're going to be chatting all things football and transfers with Mr. Rob Gutmann from the Anfield Rap, who has the award-winning Gutter Show. Great to meet you, Rob. How are you doing?
I'm fine, Gav. Nice to meet you. It's retiring winning all these awards. So yeah, so just to get down and dirty with the real people makes it really good. It's a real good opportunity.
Never lose that award-winning bit. It always cracks me up every time. It's like the same thing every one, but it's still funny.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I'll keep knocking out these awards and keep awarding them to myself, and trophy room's full.
So I think the first thing I wanted to ask you was, obviously I don't know whether you would thank me for calling you a transfer whore, but I certainly call you a transfer whore.
Go for it.
Are you happy with that?
Yeah, so, I like that.
Why do you think, I mean, first of all, why do you love a transfer so much? And why do you think other people are fascinated by transfers? Because obviously Jurgen Klopp is very much into developing players, and he's always saying, well, we've got these lads, I'll just make these lads better. But we want the big name. We want the shiny new thing, don't we? Why is that, do you think? And why in you in particular? Why do you feel like that?
Yeah, obviously people sort of like point to me and go, "You fucking transfer weirdo," right? Well, I'm allowed to swear on this, by the way.
Yes, of course.
Oh, good. The horse has bolted, hasn't it? You fucking transfer weirdo. I think if you're not, I've turned this whole question on its head if I can, Gavin. I think if you're not into transfers, what are you in it for? In as much as, how can you enjoy Mo Salah or Virgil van Dijk if you weren't part of the process? Do you know what I mean? If you weren't engaged in that bit when all our greats started life in their Liverpool life as a little seed of a rumour in a shitty tabloid or weird European website. Do you know what I mean? They all started that way. And you can't enjoy a footballer and then not think about the next one, because they never, we know there's a churn. We're interested in what Liverpool look like in 3 years' time. And if you're interested in what Liverpool look like in 3 years' time, you've got to be interested in what the noises are coming out. You've got to be excited by that. I think the weirdos are those who aren't into it. And there's grown around me, I feel, or I've become aware of in the past, is a snobbery against it, as though it's some sort of, I don't know, as though it's not highbrow. As though it's not highbrow. I mean, football isn't highbrow. It's an entertainment. It's something we're all passionate about. But you're no more worthy because you don't switch on to the process until you go to the game. I mean, I'm a fanatic about the club as more than the sport, even, so that everything about the club interests me, and transfers are a significant thing. I also think they've also played one role in my life when I was young, and I'll shut up before I go on too long on this one. No, they give you hope. Transfers when you're down. I always remember as a kid, if Liverpool had a bad result, there was the pain of it was just unfathomable to me. I couldn't get over it, and the only time I felt myself to be able to lift is if I opened one of the sports tabloids on a Monday morning after a bad weekend results, and it would go, Liverpool linked to move to buy top striker, and I go, yes, I can get behind that. That's good. That'll make things better. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, of course. I'm completely with you. Just so, I mean, me and you are of a certain vintage. So what 3 transfers from the past were you so excited about, were the most excited about?
Right. I mean, you did ask me this a bit on the agenda, so I've given it a little bit of thought, and I realise that's quite a tough question because there's a lot. I did realise when I started knocking out the ones that I just thought, closed my eyes, I thought, which ones did I feel an absolute buzz about? They're always strikers, right? They're always strikers. There's a grading down to reserve goalies as to how interested you can get. Strikers are the most interesting, reserve goalies not interesting, right? So it has to be strikers that got me absolutely buzzing. The earliest one I can remember was it's 1988 when the news breaks over frigging CFAX or teletext back then that Ian Rush was coming back to Liverpool.
Right.
And there had been I don't think there'd been any build-up because you didn't really have the media you have today to create the rumour factories and the build-up of momentum of transfer stories. But Rushy came out of the blue. And I was just ecstatic. It just felt, I mean, it was a massive signing. He cost us, I think we'd sold him for 4 million, which was a world record fee the year before, and we bought him back for 3. It was the biggest signing in our history. And, you know, we'd arguably been the best incarnation of the Liverpool side anyway. The 87-88 team, the John Barnes-Beardsley team, was all conquering. We won the league at Canterbury, outstanding. And you go, how do you improve perfection? And all you could go is, well, 30-goal John Aldridge was all right, but he wasn't world-class. So if you replaced 30-goal John Aldridge with the world-class Ian Rush, God knows what we could achieve, right? So it was just hugely exciting. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2 is sort of harder. I remember getting excited by the signing of Dean Saunders, but I'm going to skim past that because that was a really, really
That was a big deal at the time. I remember that.
Big deal, big deal, because
yeah.
Liverpool needed to come back from the, you know, the pain of Kenny leaving.
And there was comparisons with Kevin Keegan, I think.
Yeah, there were absolutely. I think I'm going to fast forward much further, really, to the one that got us. We then went through a phase of sort of, I think Collymore was quite an exciting one when he came in. But then there's a phase of austerity, really, through the Houllier Rafa years, where there are some biggish signings, aren't there? But we're skint as a club, I think, relatively speaking. But then Torres. We get people don't want to talk about it now, but Hicks and Gillette did inject a little bit of money that one summer, and Torres was the fruit of it. And, you know, although his star wasn't as in the ascendancy as it could have been maybe a couple of years earlier, he was a big name European striker, a regular for the Spanish national team, transfer record for us. You could see by his style of play that he was a pacey, exciting forward to watch. And you can't beat pace. Do you know what I mean? In terms of, I'm a sucker for anything, any YouTube of a player who's a flyer. You know, and Torres was massively exciting. I mean, you know, and one that fulfilled all the anticipation. So he's my number 2. The third one,
I think the Torres thing as well. He was linked with Man United for a long time, and they
he was
getting him, and then we felt like a big club again because I think when we got him.
Yeah, I mean, I count the biggest ones as the ones where, okay, excited about the link, you're excited when the deal goes through, but you're excited before that first game. You're going to see them. You know, you're going to go, oh my God, you can see him in a Liverpool shirt. You know, like the pre-season friendly. I think Torres played in Hong Kong or something in an Asian tour friendly. He couldn't play the first game because his clearance hadn't come through, and I was absolutely sickened. I was like, fucking hell, I've waited days for this. And then I think we had to wait another couple of days. After that, right, I mean, there's been a lot of eagerly anticipated, but you know, the one unfortunately that stands out beyond Torres is Andy fucking Carroll.
Well, I was going to say that to you. The excitement around that time was unbelievable. We had the disappointment, but then I think we felt that our owners were just acting decisively. We got Suarez in, and now we were going to go for the hottest prospect in English football. And I hammered his YouTube videos at the time, and I'm going, well, all those goals are against Man United and Arsenal.
Yeah.
And he scores in big games, and he looked unplayable. So I get that with you about the Carroll transfer.
Yeah, no, I think it's probably maybe it's best to bracket them really. When Suarez was breaking as a story, we knew that Torres was probably going to go as well, so it tempered the Suarez excitement. I mean, we'd been linked with Suarez for a couple of years, and I was excited by that one, but you still weren't quite sure because he was coming from the Dutch league. He looked exciting to watch, but again, it was tempered by knowing that Torres was going to go inevitably going to go the other way. But then we'd had a positive, a big negative, and then to quote Alan Partridge, we needed another positive. And then Andy Carroll was a big, big positive. And the drama of the way it came about, because it was next to no build-up. He'd been linked to everybody, really. Mm-hmm. He had a great season in the Championship, getting them promoted. And he proved he wasn't a Championship player. He'd exploded onto the Premiership scene, hadn't he? He'd had half the season. He'd scored goals. He looked exciting. As you said, there were big goals. He was being linked. City were being linked to him in a big way. He was going to be City's big summer transfer. You know, you thought, yeah, that's his trajectory. We won't be in the conversation for a player like that. It's a little bit like now if we were suddenly in the Kane conversation, I think, or the Sancho conversation. You just don't believe it. When suddenly you are put into that conversation, you go, wow, this is serious. And it came together so quickly, didn't it? We had to wait to see him play because I think he had a bit of an injury.
Yeah.
And so it continued, and what a disappointment. But no one could take away the excitement of those days around his signing.
Just to go back to your Ian Rush story, do you want me to give you a little bit of inside information?
Yeah, do.
I can say this now, I think, because it's actually out in the open. But at the time, and I've spoke to Kenny about this on the podcast. There's a podcast Pass where he talks about I think he talks about the Rushy transfer.
All right.
We have a podcast where we talk about transfers that he's involved with. He talks about Suarez and Andy Carroll and what that was like at the time, and Torres, and then he talks about his own transfer and stuff. It's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah.
But at that time, and do you listen to the Robbie Fowler podcast at all? I know.
Do you know what? I've scheduled it to give it a listen to. Actually,
it's really good.
They're good.
Robbie Fowler's actually really good. The guy with him's good. In fact, Robbie Fowler does most of it. The guy's there to hold his hand, I think, but Robbie Fowler bosses it.
Oh, right.
The Rush one was interesting because Ian Rush apparently was getting calls at the end of his first year in Juventus. And he makes the case that he actually did well in the Juventus. He scored 14 goals. The top scorer in the league scored 21. So he didn't do that badly. But and it's interesting. He talks about how Juventus played and he was closing people down and he was looking around. No one was behind him at all. They weren't hunting in packs and he was like really struggling with that. But anyway, he said he was getting calls like Alex Ferguson called him and said, "We want you back." And he went, "Well, I'm not for sale." And then Howard Kendall called him and he said, we want you. We'll bring you back. And he's like, "I'm not for sale." And then someone else called him and someone else called him and it kept going on. And then he said, I started thinking, God, I must be up for sale. And then Kenny phoned him and went, "You're on a flight tomorrow. You're coming back to Liverpool." Didn't give him an option. Just said, "Picking you up at the airport tomorrow morning at 9:30. We've sorted it." And he was like, "Right then, fine." The interesting thing about that, on a side note, was that Liverpool were talking to Paul Gascoigne, as were Man United at that time. And Paul Gascoigne, apparently his terms, and this, I mean, Kenny told me this, but this is out there now because Alex Ferguson's done a video with Gary Neville. Paul Gascoigne's terms were that the club had to buy his mum and dad a house to whatever club it was.
Yeah.
Liverpool and Man United both said, "No, we're paying you wages. If you want to buy a house, you buy a house." Tottenham bought his mum and dad a house, and that's why he went to Tottenham. But Liverpool would have signed Rushy instead of him. That's the way I got the thing. They were interested, but then when Rushy came available, they went for Rushy.
Oh, really? God, that's fascinating. God, what I've killed to have known that at the time.
Well,
so is this Kenny told you all this is this all on a podcast?
There's a podcast about, if I'm honest, there's a podcast about transfers. On that podcast, I don't remember whether we were recording or not, but I asked him about the Paul Gascoigne thing, and I'm not sure whether we were recording at the time. But like I say, I wouldn't have said it if it wasn't already out there, and Alex Ferguson had revealed it recently that was the problem. So I thought you might be interested in that, mate.
You've blown my mind here. I need to go and have a sit down and think about all of that.
So we've just done your most excited. You know, how excited you were about a transfer. Collymore was one for me when I was a kid. That's
it was big, that.
What about the most heartbreaking ones that we've missed out on? What have you thought about those? Have you got any for me? I've got one in recent memory, which I was crestfallen. I
mean, you asked me when I saw the question. I thought the ones that were nearly there but got away, or. I mean, if I go back to the day, now you've made me think about the 80s transfer stuff now. When I was very young, Charlie Nicholas was the big in-demand player, and there was a three-way battle between Liverpool, Arsenal and Man United for him, very public battle. And nobody thought he'd plumb for Arsenal. Bit the way, I suppose, with Gascoigne, you'd have put money on Liverpool or United days. And again, it's the lure of London, funnily enough, for those kind of footballers who banked on lifestyle, I think, more than playing. So Charlie Nicholas was a bit gutting when it got away. Do you know any more modern ones? The one that came to my mind, and there was no regrets about it, but at the time I was gutted, was when the Lee Bowyer transfer fell out of bed.
Yes.
I talked about that the other day on an Anfield wrap. They had him at Melwood ready to sign, and the vibes weren't good, and it just didn't happen. But at the time, he was the midfielder we needed. He sort of fell off a cliff after that. He got a lot of injuries.
Yeah.
You tell me. Prompt my memory on it.
I can't remember ever feeling as bad about anything the day that Liverpool issued a statement that they were no longer interested in Virgil van Dijk. I was at my mum's house, and we popped in. And I just remember getting some sort of ping and seeing it, and I felt physically sick. I really did. It was bizarre that I was that bothered, but it was horrible. A horrible moment. And I remember listening to you on the podcasts at the time, and you were inconsolable as well.
I do think. I mean, it all happened very quickly, the first phase of it. It was sort of all over the media. Liverpool are going to get Van Dijk. Van Dijk wants to sign for Liverpool. All the big Liverpool-based journals went with it. Paul Joyce, James Pearce, all of them went with it. And obviously no one had given Southampton the memo, and they went fucking apeshit, didn't they?
Yeah.
And then they put out this absolutely not. And then Liverpool quickly put out a statement going, absolutely not. One thing, I was gutted, but I did settle my mind to the fact that this is not dead. There's no chance this one's dead. I did think it would happen by the end of that summer. And I had all sorts of rumours. I think it was quite close. I think there was just a appearances thing, optics thing on it, where they had to keep it to the January. But I think the deal was sort of probably all but done by the end of that window, even if it didn't complete.
I think you were more optimistic than me. I think that the wording of that statement just seemed so final to me, which is why I found it so upsetting. I just didn't think there was a climb down from what they'd said and what had happened. But we can look back in hindsight now with fond memories.
Yeah. What other ones have there been where we've? I mean,
you were devastated about the Fekir one, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. Now they're all there. I mean, that one, he'd been linked. He'd been one of those players who's like becoming one of Europe's most touted must-haves, wasn't he? And then we got linked to him. Oh, yeah, you definitely have Fekir. And then it became very quickly after the Champions League. It was after the Champions League final. Yeah. It was. We were getting linked to him. It looked like it was in the bag. Picture leaked with him in his kit. And then he fucking fell out of bed. Again, initially it was that sort of unreality about it, where I spent the summer convincing myself, no, they're just renegotiating because there's a glitch here. But it never happened.
He's fallen off a cliff since as well, hasn't he?
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Very weird. But he hasn't had the injuries they feared, has he? Which says to me, maybe someone who decided to play within his body. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And therefore he's not the player he was. So either way, Liverpool got it very right, didn't they?
Yeah, completely.
If you're enjoying this video so far, please show your support for the Kenn7 channel by clicking the subscribe button, the like button, and also clicking the bell for future notifications.
If you could also share the video on your Twitter and Facebook account, that will show YouTube's algorithm that you like our content.
Do you know about Kenn7 merchandise?
The link is in the description of this video. We have premium fanwear for fans covering Liverpool, Celtic and Scotland, and it's fanwear for young and old. So we have t-shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts, caps, mugs, you name it, we've got it. Just something else to remember, every purchase that is made on our website, we donate to the Marina Dalglish Appeal. So you're helping a great cause as well. So let's move to this summer, mate.
Yeah.
Obviously you've been doing your gutter shows since we finished the season. Who are you most excited by from the links?
That's a good question. Most excited by? I mean, one of them's been and done. The Konate one is the one. The defender I think I wanted once I became aware that he was on the market. And it's a really, really interesting style of defender. Exactly what we need. A big unit. Since then, I have to say, broadly speaking, no one's really setting the pulses racing credibly, the credible ones. If we were properly linked to Jadon Sancho, I'd be excited, but I don't think that's going to happen. I'd like us to, what I've read and seen of Neuhaus, I think that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
I'm interested. I think Tielemans might be the sexier one if it was to happen, more expensive. Neuhaus he looks great on his YouTube clips. Then I'm watching the Euros and Emre Can's getting on the pitch ahead of him, and I'm scratching my head a little bit with that.
How many Liverpool fans are watching German games going, come on, bring him on, and has he yet to come on?
I think he did a minute or something.
Yeah.
But Emre's getting on before him. I mean, I know Emre's got better, hasn't he? But if we were linked to Emre Can to come back to Liverpool this summer, everyone would go, fuck off, you just don't know. So I sort of get lost as to whether I wanted something to happen or whether I just get myself invested in it. I mean, I could get myself into John McGinn. Have you seen the John McGinn links?
Yes.
I could really get behind that one.
Yeah.
Tielemans, I think, would be the exciting one. I think because there's a lot to his game, isn't there? I'm not sure there's enough defensively to his game. There's definitely quite a lot offensively to his game. So in the midfield ones, that's exciting. Of the forward ones, they've all been. There was Patson Dakar, looked good, but looks like he's going to Leicester. Daniel Marlins, who I'd never heard of 6 months ago, looks good.
There's a link to that this morning. Sky Sports in Germany says that Liverpool have opened talks.
Yeah, I mean, those are the guys I think who were sort of flagging that Thiago was a live one, weren't they? Despite the English media not being onto it. So yeah, I think that's an interesting one. From what I can see of him, when you watch him stylistically, he looks the part.
He's perfect.
Really quick, truly, possibly quite two-footed across the front three, gets goals. Of the players I've heard of who we've been linked with, genuinely have watched, seen them in proper game situations rather than just watch their best bits. I like Kingsley Coman. And if that became a real link, I mean, it has been, it's a couple of stories about it. And I think there's word that Bayern would sell. Maybe you'd get him for 40 odd million. I'd have Kingsley Coman in a heartbeat. He's young enough still to go up another level. He's one like Salah. You go, remember Salah was a really, really much, what's the word, hyped teenager and young footballer. I mean, we were on the verge of getting him. Then he goes to Chelsea, doesn't quite fulfill. He's looking good at Fiorentina and finally Roma. And he looked a good buy without having world-class potential. And I'm not convinced that Coman doesn't fit that thing. So I'd be really excited if we got someone like Kingsley Coman. But I'm not going to, I'd probably take your Daniel Marlins for now. Okay.
Just this morning, I don't know whether you've had a look at the news. I'm guessing you possibly have had a quick look at Twitter with a coffee, but RMC journalist Daniel Riolo has claimed that Mbappe's asked to leave. And there was an interesting bit in the article where Mbappe took a 2-hour plane journey with John Henry back in 2017.
Yeah, I mean, we know it's same as with Sancho. We know for a fact Liverpool have more than scouted those two. That they've had proper talks. I mean, 17, that was the year he was at Monaco before he moves. Liverpool were very interested. I think the truth is Liverpool moved for him a year too late. And probably a year earlier, he's too young to make the move. I think, that story's been around for a while that he met with Klopp. It's just really hard to imagine Liverpool adjusting their whole financial structure around him. I mean, there's a lot of sort of positive conspiracies around the Nike associations and the LeBron James Association. He's free next summer. Free's a good price. Free's a price Liverpool can live with. But you're looking at wages of, I think, especially if he's free, of north of $500,000 a week. So it's possibly one where Liverpool would want to get these new deals out of the way, first for Van Dijk and Salah before they started offering someone stupid money. People, I think, would a Salah, say he was on 250 or 280 with Liverpool plus bonuses, would he tolerate Mbappe coming in on 500 grand a week? He might do. But Mbappe would certainly have to hit the ground running. He'd have to be on 2 goals a game. Fair enough, you're very good. And it's the same with Sancho. They're talking about. I think the price being talked about, 75 odd million at the moment plus add-ons. I think that's out of Liverpool's reach, especially if they sell half a dozen of these fringe and loanees that we're not using. But then again, with Sancho, it's the wages. It's the wages issue. And Liverpool are big wage payers these days. I mean, big overall budget. So I just don't know. It's just, maybe it feels like life could never get that good. Do you know what I mean? It's asking too much.
The Mbappe thing always makes me chuckle because I just don't believe that there's any real substance to it. But the media outlets that are desperate for clicks, just whenever they've got nothing on, I'm sure they just throw an Mbappe story out. And I'm sure I've been guilty of it myself in the past, to be perfectly honest with you. Let's have a quick chat. I'm conscious of the time because you've obviously got stuff to do. But I know you're a big fan of Harvey Elliott. And I seem to remember on a gutter that you had some inside information before we signed Harvey Elliott.
Yes, I did.
Was that from Scotty, his dad?
No.
But someone who knows Scotty, because his dad's a season ticket holder. He sits next to my mate in the Annie Road.
Funnily enough, no, I can't say what I was going to say because I was having a conversation with a Liverpool-based journalist who we were talking about it at the time, and he was saying to me, his information is there's nothing in this. And I went, I just couldn't reveal it. I'd get into trouble. But it was, he was very sure of it. And And so it happened.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting one, Harvey Elliott, isn't it? I'm sort of so long in the tooth that I have to fight off being. So I've got sort of two conversations. One, I go, he's that good. He's 17. Is this sort of the way we sort of played out with Michael Owen a bit? The hype was irresistible, and then once you give them their chance, they're up and running. Another part of me is thinking of the likes of Suso and Pacheco.
Yeah,
I was actually giving this some thought earlier this morning. I thought the only way to be honest with yourself is if you had to bet, if you had to bet a substantial, life-changing amount of money on it, right? What would you say? Where would you say Harvey Elliott ends up now? I said to myself, from absolutely fading to a Rhian Brewster, probably, where it ends up being a bit flatter to deceive, to maybe carving out a brilliant career like Suso has in Serie A, or does he go stellar? And obviously, we're in it for him going stellar. I feel strongly that, as a minimum, that lad makes a decent Premier League career for himself, right? That's the platform we start from. It's really hard, unless he's unlucky with injuries or he goes off the rails, just becomes Paul Gascoigne, no offence. But, with the hits the clubs, you can't not see him having a decent level Premier League career, given how good he is at this tender age. You feel he's got a more than strong chance of reaching where Curtis Jones has reached, and we're still not sure where Curtis Jones ends up. Could he end up being as good as one of our front three? It's not impossible. I suppose that feels like you're being optimistic to say you think that's going to happen. But whilst it's a possibility, while you talk about that as a ceiling, we've got to invest in this player. And I am a big believer with youth, with those kind of kids. You've got to give them a go. You just can't hold them back. You've got to find out, especially if you can put them in a strong team. You don't want to put them in a team that's struggling. But if you can put them in a team around experienced pros who can look after them a bit. I think Raheem Sterling came into a good Liverpool side, alongside Suarez and Gerrard, Coutinho, and that did him the world of good. I think he's got Raheem Sterling like a potential. I mean, like Raheem Sterling's the last great product of our youth system. Well, Trent is actually, sorry, but four last great forwards, shall we say? We're all in it for the forwards.
I think with Harvey Elliott, I think if you spoke to Dave Shannon or Steve Highway or any of the youth coaches, I think they will be able to tell you that there's certain players that they just know are going to make it, mainly because they've got the attitude and the dedication. Yeah. Loads of them have got talent, but they can't apply themselves. And I think from what I know, from what I've been told, Harvey Elliott is utterly dedicated. He's obsessed. He wants to. I'm sure he wants to beat James Milner in pre-season at the thing. There was a little thing where he was doing sit-ups, and then there was a video of James Milner doing sit-ups last pre-season. I don't know whether you heard it, and he was like comparable. And I know from what I've heard that he's got that mentality that he just wants to make the best of himself. So that bodes well, and I'm quite hopeful. I just think he's a fabulous talent. I can't wait to see him this season, and I really hope it works out for him.
Yeah, I think he's fantastic. I did worry if he's not as natural, because he's a wide player, right? Well, that's where we've seen him. I do worry sometimes for wide men who don't have natural pace to burn, and I don't think he's that. But he is quick over 10 yards, and he's quick in his mind. So that
he's still developing physically as well, Rob, isn't he?
Yeah, of course. 17 is young. It is, but if we say 17 is young, he'll be 18 before we blink. He might even be 18. I haven't checked.
I think he's just turned 18 in the last month, something.
And if you're, and we can say, he's young, he's got years ahead of him. But the truth is, I think, if you did a thorough analysis of it, most of the elites, players who go on to be, like our front three are European top 20 players, most of them are very visible at 18. Do you know what I mean? They are playing, getting first team top league action. So he needs to get into this Liverpool team quite regularly for him to fulfill the true exceeding potential we want him to fulfill. I wonder if he may come off the sides a bit more and into a more 10-ish role. I don't know. I think the same with Curtis Jones, by the way. I think Curtis Jones isn't quite being used correctly by Liverpool. Who am I to say this, right, to Jurgen and his team? But they're sort of playing him in a sort of like a young Henderson, position for me. Maybe they think he needs to cut his teeth to learn our philosophy, to learn to just to leg it all over the pitch and close people down. But do wonder if we need to get Curtis Jones nearer the goal. I think players like him and Harvey, you just have to put them nearer the goal because they've got that kind of technique and that kind of ability to finish and spot a cute pass. You've got to put them where they can be dangerous.
The Curtis Jones we're seeing at the moment is a much more mature, restrained Curtis Jones, not the Curtis Jones we certainly saw in the under-23s.
No, it isn't.
And 18, is it? So I wonder, is there a level to go to still?
Well, I hope so with Curtis. I mean, the Curtis Jones I watched in the under-23s is mind-blowing. I mean, at his level, he's Messi at his level. He's scoring 4s and 5s in games like Sterling was, really. And he's doing whatever he wants on the pitch. You're seeing him going on like 30-yard mazy dribbles, beating everyone and just slotting it, doing whatever he likes, controlling it, absolutely controlling the game like an experienced master. We're not seeing him do anything like that, which is understandable when he's a kid. But whatever happens, we were giving him more license in those things. And maybe that comes now. Maybe they've just got to learn to trust him. I just hope in the process of sort of teaching him the darker arts or the blunter arts that we don't kill some of what made him the player we all enjoyed and thought was irresistible at under-23 level.
Completely. Nat Phillips, where do you stand? Because obviously there's a lot of links at the moment from going to Burnley or Newcastle or Aston Villa or wherever. So where do you stand on that? Do you think that we can hold him and hold him back for a year and just to suit our own purposes, or do you think that's unfair?
Well, let me come to that as a second one. If I park what's good for Nat's career, I just say my opinion of him is I rate him enormously, and I'm not going to do it with the caveats that he's gone with people who talk about Nat all season like, he's done really well, but we all know. I don't think, but we all know. I think there's a young man. When you talk about mental strength, it reminds me of the mental strength Jamie Carragher showed when he was young. A lot of people look to Jamie Carragher go, limited, isn't he? Do you know what I mean? They did. I
remember he used to get a dog's abuse when he played.
He did. Nobody really thought he was a long-term answer to anything, but he was just massive mental strength, and he used that. And he got better and better and better, and became a world-class defender. I'm not going to say Nat Phillips can have the same trajectory as Jamie Carragher, but I think he could become a top English defender who plays for his country. I don't see why he can't be Harry fucking Maguire. Do you know what I mean? A minimum. I'm really not seeing a massive difference between them. I thought he was outstanding. And our last 10 games of the season, which is where he gets a regular game, we win 8 out of 10. We don't concede a shitload of goals. So he's playing in a side, playing at a title-winning level. I'd like to see you give him a season alongside Virgil van Dijk. Okay. Yeah, there'll be some games where some nippy striker will turn him and he'll be made to look ponderous. But a lot of the time, he'll do really well. My bigger question mark about him is, can he sustain the level of concentration and focus? Because it's one thing doing it over a 3-month spell. It's quite another doing it over season after season. So, second part of your question is, can Liverpool make use of him? That's a harder one. I would, in a heartbeat, I'd have him in our pool of defenders because I don't think you'd have to pay him a huge wage. And unfortunately, I don't think the transfer fee you get from him makes him particularly an appealing sale. Even if you get 12 million, I think he's worth more than that, especially as Joel Matip isn't likely to be your fourth choice because he's so injury prone. And I think it probably is going to be best for his career to move on. Although I just do wonder that if part of the reason we've seen the mental strength from him, we've seen this season, isn't because he's seen elite opportunity in front of him. Do you know what I mean? He's saying, I'm playing in the Champions League quarter-final against Real Madrid. I think he didn't. Did he play in that? Yeah, I think he did. Yeah, against Ozan Kabak. And you go, this is my opportunity here. Whereas I wonder at Burnley if he can I know it's Premier League, right? And he's very motivated. I just wonder though if it'll lack that slight percent motivation, which will take him to the levels which I think he could go to if he stays at Liverpool. But he'd need to be lucky at Liverpool with Liverpool's sort of more injury-prone centre-half staying injury-prone.
But you're very firmly like I am behind that we need 5 centre-backs. You can't go into the season without 5 centre-backs because of the issues.
Yeah.
I
mean, Matip is hugely injury prone, to the extent that you almost go, he isn't one of them, right? Much as we enjoy him when he plays. Joe Gomez and Van Dijk have had injuries like Laporte had, which have led to City being more than happy to dispense with Laporte. So, God knows what version we get back. Then there's the kid Kanata we're buying in. Brilliant. Fantastic signing. Have you seen his injury record?
Yeah.
You go, there's only one of those 5 who managed to stay fit over the last 3 years. Only one of them. And he's called Nat Phillips. That would be, part of me thinks it'd be nuts to consider selling.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do agree with you. Just before I let you go, what are your thoughts? I mean, the Benitez to Everton thing seems to have calmed down. I've not seen the latest on it, but I thought it was going to happen. And now it's still not happened. And you start to think, well, if it's going on and on and on, is it really going to happen? What's your reading of it and what are your thoughts? Would you be bothered? I
mean, I'm not paying daily attention to it because it turns my stomach. It just does, right? It seems to have split Liverpool support in as much as a lot are laughing at Everton for the anger that and the trauma they'll face having to take on potentially take on an ex-Liverpool great manager. Whereas I'm more focused on the fact that I don't want one of our legends, one of our heroes, to become potentially one of their heroes and legends. I don't want that. And that's my first instinct. Do I think less of Rafa as a human being if he takes that job? No, he's got to do the right by his family. But I'm entitled, and I've argued with a lot of Liverpool fans, I'm entitled to sort of take him down a peg in my legend status in my own stupid mind. I'm sure I am. I'm entitled to think I'm not sure I want him on the flag on the Kop anymore if he's literally managing an Everton side who's going to come to Anfield and try and beat us and absolutely, indulging gleefully in trying to beat us and see us ruined, and then he'll be part of that team and that process. I can't stay in love with an icon who's part of that process. So I desperately hope this doesn't come to pass.
He's very binary anyway, Rafa. He always has been. It's black and white with him. So he will just go, well, what do you want me to do? It's a Premier League club. I live around the corner. It's a no-brainer, surely.
He'll see it like that.
Yeah.
That's Rafa, but that's why, when people go, Rafa's much more business-like, I think, than a lot of our fans projected a personality onto Rafa that I don't think is Rafa.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
he is not. Although of course, we've seen examples of Rafa being emotional. I don't think he's naturally the most emotional man. He's not like a Klopp or a Houllier or a Kenny. In terms of who are figures to my mind who wouldn't manage Everton. They're not as all business as Rafa is in that sense. And, I don't want people, if they listen to this going, you forget what Rafa did over this, that, and the other. No, I don't forget that. And what he did for Liverpool is fantastic. I shouldn't have to caveat it with that. But by the same token, there is a side to Rafa, which is, I'm a practical man. I need to earn money. I need a job. It's Premier League. As you said, it's near my home. Why the fuck wouldn't I take it? Yeah. And there's part of me that goes, absolutely, Rafa. You're not less of a human being for doing that. Let's be very clear on that.
Oh, good stuff, mate. Well, listen, thanks very much for joining me. I've really enjoyed it.
Me too.
When's the next gutter out? Are you? How many are you doing a week at the moment? By the way,
we're doing 2 as a minimum. And if anything breaks, it's to the gutter studio in a hurry. Unfortunately, I have to say the Zoom thing's been a revelation for us in as much as it just enables you to do quicker reactions to stuff rather than say, you might be in different parts of the country or in different parts of the city and have to get to a studio. So although it's nice to do it in the studio, we are doing them in the studio, but we can do them. I'm leaving you in about 15 minutes to do a gutter today. And you've given me some material. The Doniel Marlon stuff will be interesting. I think we're definitely going to have to talk about that.
Brilliant. Well, listen, thanks very much, Rob. I really appreciate your time. And
pleasure, Gav.
If anyone's watching this on YouTube, don't forget to click subscribe and like, and tune in for future broadcasts. Rob, thanks very much, mate. Take care.
Cheers, Gav. Thanks a lot.